Hello everyone, welcome back from the lunch. And again, if we have new members joining, please fill up the survey. And again, it is optional, but we are just requesting you can choose to not give a lot of data and just give your name and affiliation. It's just so that we know from where people are coming in. And I'm trying to get like a data visualization to the end of the session so that I can actually show after our presentation that exactly who attended and so on. So if you can attend, that would be really great. Anyway, so now welcome everyone to the paper session 2. Thank you so much for joining us after a wonderful lunch. It was boxed lunch, but we can do with it, right? So the paper session 2 is starting with the first paper on understanding reCAPTCHA V2 via a large-scale live user study. Our presenter is Renascence from University of California, Irvine.
Hi everyone, thank you for the nice introduction and thank you for giving me the opportunity to present our work, Understanding reCAPTCHA V2 via a large-scale user study. We will start with a little bit of background information. So what is CAPTCHA? CAPTCHA is a completely automated public Turing test to tell computers and humans apart. CAPTCHAs are supposed to be easy for humans, but difficult for machines. And reCAPTCHA is the most prominent CAPTCHA provider. It provides two types of CAPTCHAs, behavior-based or checkbox CAPTCHA and image-based CAPTCHA. Behavior-based CAPTCHA involves a risk analysis system and users interacting with the checkbox. The risk analysis system utilizes tracking cookies to determine whether a user is suspicious. Users with novel cookies are more likely to be shown an additional image CAPTCHA. And image-based CAPTCHA involves image classification tasks. Based on the types of CAPTCHAs that users encounter, there are two solving scenarios, checkbox only or checkbox plus image. Now let's talk about the motivation behind this work. reCAPTCHA is deployed in millions of websites. Every day, more than 100 million instances of reCAPTCHA are solved. Anybody who has solved an image CAPTCHA knows that it is time-consuming and annoying. Moreover, there are successful attacks against CAPTCHA. Here, by successful attack, we mean that CAPTCHA could be solved automatically without human involvement. So, it is necessary to investigate the usability and effectiveness of reCAPTCHA. Unfortunately, there are very limited prior work on this field. We found only 2 prior research. One of them had only 40 participants, and the another one was conducted in MTurk. Both of them used mock-up scenarios, and users are awarded to solve CAPTCHAs. So, the results from these studies do not correctly reflect the real-world scenario. To solve this, we conduct a large-scale and real-world user study on reCAPTCHA. We present quantitative analysis of solving time, quantitative and qualitative analysis of usability, and a detailed discussion on the cost and security of reCAPTCHA. Our study was conducted over 13 months. We incorporated reCAPTCHA service in the account creation and password reset feature of UCI ICS account. I want to emphasize here that incorporating reCAPTCHA in the website was not superfluous or gratuitous. In fact, the IT department was happy to include this service in the website because they believed that it will make the website more secure. Another point is all the students who open an ICS account, they do so only once during their university career. So anyone who comes to the account creation website are likely to be it is likely to be the first time they are coming to this website. So they have no expectation of either solving or not solving a CAPTCHA in the website. As a result, it clearly reflects the real world scenario where a user goes to a website to obtain some services and they encounter CAPTCHA. We collected 9,141 valid records from 3,625 unique participants. We also conducted a post-study survey and obtained responses from 108 participants. Now we shall go over some results. We show the solving times of reCAPTCHA here. All the times here are in seconds. We calculate the total solving time and also separately the checkbox and image solving times. Here the solving time includes the time starting from when the CAPTCHA was rendered to the time when user clicked submit button. We study the effect of service type on solving time. We see that there is statistically significant difference in the checkbox solving time of password reset service. We also study the effect of attempt numbers on solving time. We found that solving time decreases with attempt numbers. Users spend significantly longer time in solving CAPTCHAs on their first attempt compared to other attempts. We also study the effect of education levels. We show a direct trend of decreasing solving time starting from freshman and going upwards to senior. We also observe the effect of measure on solving times. There are 62 measures in total, but we show only the 22 most significant measures here. Among them, only 8 had statistically significant difference in the checkbox solving time. Among them, non-STEM measures took longer to solve CAPTCHAs compared to STEM measures. Next, we focus on the usability of reCAPTCHA. For that, we quickly go over some background information. System Usability Scale, or SAS in short, is a popular survey method to assess usability of a product. It consists of 10 questions. Every question has 5 options ranging from strongly disagree to strongly agree. There is a specific method to obtain numeric SAS scores from the responses of these questions. There is also a well-defined adjective scaling associated with the numeric SAS scores. For example, any SAS score between 71.4 to 85.5 denotes good usability level. So we calculate the SAS score of checkbox and image CAPTCHAs and find that checkbox CAPTCHA has good usability level while image CAPTCHA has okay usability level. We also obtain users' preferences using a custom scale and see that checkbox is thought to be pleasant or very pleasant, while image CAPTCHA is considered to be annoying or very annoying. We also ask users to provide their opinions on CAPTCHAs through an open-worded question. And most prominent words for checkbox are easy and simple. However, some users still found them annoying. On the other hand, most users thought that image CAPTCHA is annoying. However, those are still easy for some users. Okay, sorry. Next, we briefly discuss the cost associated with the CAPTCHAs. Since their adoption, Google has incurred at least 6.1 billion USD in free human labor, and they have made a potential profit of at least 8.75 billion USD from each sale of their total dataset. reCAPTCHA v2 sessions also use tracking cookies, and Google has made potential profit of 888 billion USD from selling these tracking cookies. For environmental cost, we consider only the network transmission of the CAPTCHA. We do not even take into account the server-side and client-side computational cost. Even then, reCAPTCHA is responsible for at least 7.5 million pounds of carbon dioxide pollution. We shall briefly go over the security of reCAPTCHA. We have seen that bots are faster than human and more accurate than human in solving reCAPTCHA. That defeats the whole purpose of CAPTCHA, which is supposed to be easy for human while difficult for machine. But we see the opposite here. And we have seen successful attacks against all types of reCAPTCHA v2 and even the new version, which is reCAPTCHA v3. So, considering reCAPTCHA v2's negative perception, its immense cost, and its susceptibility to bots, we conclude that reCAPTCHA v2 and similar reCAPTCHA technology should be deprecated. Finally, our work has sparked significant discourse within the technical community. Here are some of the headlines which cite our work. So, thank you everyone, and I am happy to answer questions.
Do we have any questions? Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. My question is related to the environmental cost that you talked about. So you said CAPTCHAs consume a lot of CO2. Have you considered the bots that they prevented from connecting to websites? So like, was there a chance that they prevented like a lot of consumption of CO2 that will balance like the consumption that they actually create?
We haven't calculated the approximate savings that it prevents by stopping bots from interacting, but we show that bots are actually more successful than humans in solving CAPTCHAs. So we think that any savings in that case will be negligible, since they are not actually preventing bots.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, so I have a question, like it might be a follow-up to this. You mentioned about like people found it easy, but they also found it annoying, right? So were there any open-ended answers to the survey in terms of like what did they like and what made it annoying, or what made it, I can imagine what can make it annoying, but yeah, what made it easy for them?
No, we had just one open-ended question where we asked them, what do you think of CAPTCHA? But we had some interesting answers there. Somebody said that they liked it because it makes their accounts more secure, and somebody said that they find it annoying because they have to solve many CAPTCHAs.
Thank you again. Let's give a round of applause to Renascence. Okay, our next presenter is the paper is on modeling end-user active discomfort with mobile app permissions across physical context. And Yuxi from Georgia Institute of Technology and Northeastern University is going to present. Let's give a round of applause.
Should I? Okay. Oh, sure. Oh, hold on.
see if it'll.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna try with you. Okay.
Hello, everyone. My name is Yuxi, and I'm a postdoc fellow at Northeastern University. Thank you for all being here today. And today, on behalf of my collaborators, I'll be presenting our paper, Modeling End User Affective Discomfort with Mobile App Permissions Across Contexts. Permissions have been studied in depth since the advent of modern smartphones, as the authors of the Test of Time Award surely know very well. Users tend to ignore permissions, and in response, researchers have attempted to make permission information more legible and accessible for users. We've learned that users can often pick up on why a permission is requested when you give them the info about the context of that permission's use. And also, in turn, clarifying the reason for a permission's use might ease user concerns about that use. But even a user that's well-educated and certain about their privacy and permission preferences can be very vulnerable through different social, psychological, or environmental pressures. So for example, when a user sees that an app is highly rated on the App Store or the Google Play Store, they can feel a false sense of safety and be misled into granting permissions. And when people are under financial duress, such as when they're using mobile loan apps, they're more likely to grant invasive permissions. To address these differences in contextual preferences, some work has actually tried to dynamically predict preferences for users based on their context. But these attempts have been primarily evaluated based on whether users would accept the permission setting. And this can be problematic for a few reasons. So recent work has posed that users have come to expect and accept that mobile apps will just be privacy invasive. And in particular, users are becoming habituated to being constantly uncomfortable with data usage by apps. So just because a user accepts a permission setting doesn't mean that it aligns with their privacy preferences. So in this work, we asked the question, how does a user's affective discomfort with permission uses of data vary across physical contexts? In other words, we tried to understand how users feel about a permission beyond whether or not they would necessarily accept it. We conducted a 4-week-long experience sampling study with 44 people who use an Android device as their primary phone. And over the month, we asked our participants about their affective response to the use of a randomly selected permissioned use of data by a specific app that they had installed. And these responses include both a numerical concern score that they gave us and also a specific emotional affect that they chose. And then we also asked participants to self-report their general physical location and what they were currently doing. From this study, we had 2 hypotheses. First, participants with different compositions of recorded contexts will have different average levels of concern. And second, permission requests made in different physical contexts will be correlated with different levels of concern. And I also wanted to clarify 2 terms that we use throughout our study. So a permission is an access control setting that applies to all physical contexts. And a permission use of data, or a PUD, is the use of data enabled by that permission at a specific time in a specific context. So in our study, each unit of data collected from participants is a PUD. And then before going into the main findings, I also wanted to quickly explain how to interpret our concern scores. So here we've mapped the concern scores to the emotional affects that participants reported. At concern level 1, participants often felt untroubled or indifferent. And then at levels 2 and 3, they were a bit more curious, but not necessarily negative. But then you can see at levels 4 and 5, there's a lot higher levels of participants reporting feeling distressed and hostile, which are the green colors on these bars. And so due to these compositions, we generally say that at concern levels 1 to 3, there's low affective discomfort, and then at 4 to 5, there's high discomfort. With that out of the way, let's move on to our first hypothesis about participant typologies. So we clustered participants based on their distributions of recorded locations and activities, and then we looked at the average level of concern for each cluster. So for clustering based on participants' location, we saw three pretty distinct groups. L1 and L2 were a bit different, but both spent a lot of their time at home, and they had lower levels of concern. But then you can see in L3, they had a more even split between more locations. And so while we didn't ask participants about their lives generally, like we didn't ask for qualitative information, we might imagine that this group is more of an urban professional type since they use public transit and go out to eat. They spend more time in public spaces and then also have a higher level of concern than the other two groups. And then clustering by activities points to similar insights. For example, A1, which has majority leisure activities and very little working activity, might signal unemployment or being a student, and this group had the lowest levels of concern. But the A3 group, on the other hand, works a lot and then splits the rest of their time on a variety of activities, and they're out and about and also have the highest levels of concern. Moving on to our second hypothesis about context effects, we constructed a mixed effects model. And so our independent variables were location and activity, and the covariates were the app type and permission type. And then the dependent variable was the participant reported level of concern for that specific PUD. So essentially, each data point represents a PUD and how a participant feels about that. And then we use the most common category in each variable as our baseline. So in other words, we can interpret the coefficients in comparison to a participant that was at home, working, using a media app that requests a connectivity-related permission. And their baseline level of concern was about 2.9, which aligns pretty well with the affect bar chart that I discussed earlier. So we found a few significant effects from context. For example, when participants were in a store, they were much more concerned about a PUD, but in quote-unquote other locations, which mostly were travel-related places like airports and hotels, participants were less concerned. And similarly, when they were out running errands, they also felt less concerned. But also, finally, when participants reported that they were playing a game, they also felt higher concern. And this also mirrors covariate effects of gaming apps increasing concern as well. So to summarize our findings, we did find evidence supporting both of our hypotheses. H1, which is related to participant typologies, and H2 related to specific contexts. In other words, it's clear that user context has some influence on how they feel about permissions, be it negative or positive. And so I want to add on a few implications of this finding. A natural takeaway might be to make permission setting more context aware. However, doing so might be prohibitively complex for a user to set up. They would have to answer hundreds of questions about all sorts of context and decisions. And making it a dynamic and predictive system might then seem to be the logical solution to this. But then when we're doing so, we have to make sure that we're maintaining these systems appropriately. We need to make sure we're not just creating a user acceptance feedback loop where users end up normalizing what they actually think is creepy or invasive just because at one point in the past they've accepted it. And then so future work should explore additional interpretations and measurements of affective discomfort. So for example, concern can have other interpretations beyond predicting what a user is going to do with a permission. A lot of participants, for example, indicated that they were curious about a PUD, even though they were also simultaneously concerned about it. So dynamic predictive approaches could inform users of when and why changes to permissions are being made in association with changes in context. And so if you pair that personalization engine with education, then users can make better decisions that feed back into the system. And also, concern is, of course, only one component of how users feel about a PUD. For example, even if there is low concern around a permission, a user might still not want to give access to it anyway. And then finally, some limitations of our work. First, the PUDs that we ping participants with weren't necessarily limited to what participants had allowed. So some might have felt particularly alarmed if they remember denying them in the past. But we were still able to study the differences in concern across different contexts. And also, second, our sample might not be fully representative or exhaustive. It was majority male and college educated, and we couldn't get a data point for every combination of context and app type and permission. And since our study was conducted during the pandemic, in the height of it, when participants' contexts were likely significantly different from now, so more diverse sampling in the future could help make our findings more generalizable. So in summary, in our work, we found that there are distinguishable differences in concerns for PUDs in public versus private contexts. Participants with different contextual compositions of their daily lives reported distinct average levels of concern with PUDs, and also care should be taken to integrate user agency when designing automated permission systems to avoid the normalization of affective discomfort. Thank you for attending my talk today.
Thank you so much. Any questions? Yeah.
Was participant age factored into this?
Sorry, what was that?
Was the participant's age factored into this?
No, we did not collect.
Okay,
Yeah.
because I think that would be a very telling aspect of
Yeah.
generational differences.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, so I had a question. In the concerns bar graph, there was an option of none of the above and others. Are there any examples of what do the others entail?
I don't have specific ones, but it was like a text box that they could fill in with additional.
Okay, so it was chosen by the participants
Yeah.
themselves. Okay. Okay, so I think, again, after post-lunch, people are shy, so they can talk to Yuxi about more questions in person as well. So yes, thanks again. Let's give a round of applause. Okay, so for our next paper, we have Understanding Influence on SMS Phishing Detection, User Behavior, Demographics, and Message Attributes. So, Mohammed Luftar? Yes, Mohammed Luftar from California State University, San Marcos, is going to talk about it. So let's give a big round of applause. Everyone has actually tested their laptop multiple times, but that's how technology works.
Good afternoon, all. How are you? Good. So, on behalf of my master student Daniel Timko and my undergrad student Daniel Hernandez, I'm presenting our work on SMS phishing. I have a question for you. How many of you familiar or not familiar with this? Familiar? Familiar? Not familiar? Any of you not familiar? Okay. That tells the story, okay? So if we go with some of the statistics, or before that, let me go with the definition, what it is. It is SMS phishing, smishing. So it is a kind of SMS version of email phishing, okay? So here the hackers craft the convincing fake SMS, and they try to lure the user, and they get whatever they want, okay, with the malicious purpose. Now, some of the stats, 75% of millennial prefer over phone calls than over phone calls, and 83% of read SMS messages within 90 seconds of receipt. Okay. Next one, SMS phishings are on rise according to many polls, and with the ubiquity of smartphone, attackers are targeting billions of users as per different statistics. And as per the FTC, like almost $330 million tech scam happened in the year of 22, which is roughly double than 21. Now, what is the current gap or research? There are limited prior studies on SMS phishing topic, and there are few recent studies got published, mostly the user vulnerability to smishing attack. Like from our lab, we conducted a study in 2023, where we found that 16% of the participants, they click to the link if they receive an SMS to their phone. And the other research group, they find that similar, 1 in 24 user click the URL they receive. And there are some study like the understanding of anti-smishing tool, whether it is robust or not. But mostly those are user action related studies or tools related study. So there are limited exploration of user perception. That's why our study is basically fill the gap, where we can understand the user perception of legitimacy of real fake, or their comfort or discomfort or interaction level in the study. So we come up with 4 research questions. The first one was how do user likelihood interacting or level of comfort of interacting, or the brand familiarity or message history impact their ability to detect smishing or not. The next one is the demographic factor. The third one is the different attribute of the SMS. And fourth one is different behavioral metrics, whether that basically have correlation with the identification of smishing or not. So the methodology, first I need to say that our study got approved from the IRB, from our university. We conducted a survey into Qualtrics. We recruited over 187 participants through different posting in social media and school channel. And each of the participants were given 16 SMS images in 2 rounds. And we collected the SMS from our tool, smishtank.com. It is publicly available. So if you have any SMS, please feel free to submit, and dataset also available there. Okay, so it is our tool that we develop, and we give 12 individual to $50 of Amazon gift card based on the lottery. The study procedure, as we conducted our experiment to the Qualtrics, we asked several questions, whether they wanted to interact with that SMS, then their comfort level, their heat map, particularly we tell them which part of the SMS is basically affect their discomfort or comfort, then whether they're familiar with the brand, and whether they received that similar SMS prior to this study. And in the second round, we ask the specific question, whether they thought this is real or fake. Now the research question 1 result. So if you see, we have the real and fake accuracy. So in the left side, in the real accuracy is lower than the fake accuracy. So which is aligned with the morning session story. Like if you send the real SMS to the user, they think that this is a fake SMS. Okay, whatever issue you are sending. That is one of our finding, and we did not find any familiarity of the brand or a prior receive of that SMS to the accuracy in our case. Now the second question answer, please don't take it personally. We have some demographic, like let's say the female participant had significant lower comfort and higher accuracy than males. Ethnicity, Hispanic participant significantly lower comfort and interaction rates than other group. And younger participant had lower comfort and interaction rates than older people. And occupation, we found that student had significantly lower comfort and interaction rate than business and IT people. And we did not find any relationship between, significant relationship between smartphone use or their education level who participated in our study. The third one, we basically tell them to point the comfort level, what is the area. So you see that we have the sender call to action, or the content, or the URL, several area in the SMS. So we found that clicking on the call to action increased the odds of correctly identifying real SMS by 48%. And then clicking on the sender increased the odds of correctly identifying fake SMS by 95%. and the URL increase the the overall the CTA call to action and URL has some the significantly odds. So the other thing is basically we also check that for real SMS, clicking on the sender lead to the significantly lower comfort and likelihood the interact. The another research question we had, the different like the standard questionnaire SS6, we did not find any correlation. The privacy concern matrix, we found the negative correlation. The security behavior, we found the negative correlation. Security familiarity, we found the negative correlation, and the attention control, we also found the negative correlation. The discussion, we found that when you send SMS to their mobile phone, you get like 16% people fall into the trap. But if you ask them, it is around 34% cannot detect. Okay, so there is a gap between this one. Like if you send their mobile SMS versus the screenshot you display to the user. The other work is the accuracy of the real is significantly lower than the accuracy of the fake. Sorry. The recommendation, so we need the user education, particularly like if they receive the real SMS, so that they don't think that this is a fake or other way. And also there are apps should highlight some of the crucial area of the SMS so that user can easily detect this is coming from the authentic source. Some of the limitation is, as usual, the limited sample size. We have 87. Like the other paper, they are more than 400, 500. That is one of the limitation. And the artificial study environment. So we did not conduct the real experiment. Rather, we display the SMS screenshot that is artificially. And the lack of contextual. In conclusion, we found that the fake SMS accuracy was 67. The real SMS accuracy 43. And there are some improvement that we need to do. Particularly, the brand should enhance their communication strategy to their user to make sure that they fall into a trap. Thank you so much. I'm happy to answer any question you have.
Hi, thank you. This is Elijah Bama-Sims from Carnegie Mellon University. I think I read your previous paper where you simulated smishing. I was curious about the demographic comparisons, and specifically if you could speak more about the motivation for them, because it sounds like you did a lot of different demographic comparisons and just, sort of what motivated you to look at those features, just because they're maybe correlated relationships rather than causation relationships.
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, in this study, we did not have a chance to explore more than their perception level. Particularly, like we collected all our data set from the social media posting, our school email. So we did not ask the follow-up question regarding the more depth of the study. Rather, just say that the younger people are more prone to the phishing attack, or older people are less like this. And also, in future study, we plan to go in a different demographic, like the older or high school or some other, which is a kind of our ongoing study that we are doing. Thank you.
Great. Any other questions? I have one. One of the recommendations is user education, right? And we learned in our previous session that campaigns maybe are not that acceptable. So any suggestions on how can we educate the users?
Yeah, I think in this part, probably my experience in this area of the research, probably we can design some of the indicator in the SMS and where user can get like the like if they receive the SMS, we can indicate that, hey, this is kind of not good. Okay, so the inbox who's designed the apps, mobile inbox apps, they can do something like that. Okay, so that is my takeaway from this research.
Thank you so much. Let's give a round of applause again. Yeah, so our next paper is on Throwback accounts, throwaway accounts and moderation on Reddit. And our presenter is Sheng from Clemson University. You have to go. Yes, we will. Just change this to the other one. You need your slides, right?
No, never mind. I can go without.
Yes.
All right. All right.
You have to go to the menu. Go to the menu and the settings, please.
This one?
Yes. And here, can you check?
Check this.
Yeah, yeah. Can I go to the display? Nice. Display settings. Not really. If you can move his notes here and then the main content, that would be great.
It's disconnected now.
Okay.
Don't worry, I only stopped the minute.
Yeah.
Let me try this.
You might try directly as well. It has an HDMI, but it's a little short cable.
Yeah.
And again, this is a good time for anybody who has not filled in the survey.
I think when I tested it, worked, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Did you go directly HDMI?
No, no, I use this one.
That one?
That worked.
Okay. Let's use this one.
Sorry about all the technical issues. It's finally working. So let's get started. Hello, everyone. I'm Chen Guo. I'm a PhD candidate in human-centered computing at Clemson University. I also work at Google as a UX researcher. So today I'm presenting my PhD dissertation research about server accounts and moderation on Reddit. So first of all, I'd like to give you a quick overview of what I will be talking about today. So first, in this study, we found that server accounts do not increase the likelihood of content being removed by human moderators, suggesting SMPs should facilitate anonymous engagement more easily while adopting new moderation methods to reduce human cost. We also found that content posted by server accounts is more likely to be removed, highlighting the moderation's role in balancing privacy and content quality on social media platforms. Finally, we found that content removal by human moderators increase in more sensitive subreddits, highlighting the need for future SMP moderation systems to incorporate context sensitivity. So you may now wonder, what is actually a server account, right? On Reddit, the identity policies for users to choose whatever username you would like to use. Following the literature, we consider those primary non-anonymous accounts as identified accounts. One community norm on Reddit is for users to use a temporary, non-identifiable, and non-linkable accounts to achieve short-term temporary anonymity. Many of these accounts are just used only once, or almost all of them are used only just 3 times or fewer. It's just like I use it and I throw it away, right? So following the literature, we call those accounts as throwaway accounts. Since anonymity has certain pros and cons, we all know, and SMPs like Reddit all have some sort of moderation mechanisms, we ask, what is the difference in the level of removal by moderation between throwaway accounts and identified accounts on Reddit? Regarding content moderation, on Reddit, there are 2 forms. First one is the distributed moderation, which is distributing some of the moderation tasks to its users. For example, users can upvote, downvote, and they can report on any content. The other form of moderation here is centralized moderation, which is done through human moderators and the moderation bots. The most widely used moderation bot on Reddit here is called auto moderator. Since all human efforts, such as human moderation, always has cost, right? So we wonder, what does the use of server accounts on Reddit increase the likelihood of content removal by human moderators compared to the removal by moderation bots? To answer our research questions, we collected both moderated and unmoderated content from Reddit. Using the bot called public mod logs, we collected more than 36K moderation logs from 340 subreddits within a 3-month period. We then collected all the posts and comments from the same subreddits in the same time window. Note that not all moderation on Reddit leads to content removal. So in this data set, we collected more than 14K removed posts and comments and more than 520K unremoved posts and comments. For each post and comment, we collected the timestamps, the moderator's identity, the user or author's identity, and the actual content of the post and comment. Now let's talk about the things we measured in this study. We measured the identity of users and moderators to distinguish between throwaway accounts versus identified accounts, and similarly human moderators versus moderation bots. We get this down by programmatically logging to each username of all accounts following rules from the literature. We then use human raters to follow up to make sure the classification is accurate. We also utilize the human moderators to rate the sensitivity level of each subreddit in a 5-point Likert scale. The results were generated by logistic regressions. So what did we find, right? First, we found that server accounts do not increase the likelihood of content being removed by human moderators. Users often have the privacy needs to use online communities, including SMPs, anonymously, especially for highly sensitive topics. Currently, being anonymous on SMPs is not easy, though. Most of the SMPs do not have a privacy feature allow users to be anonymous online. So users have to use some sort of workaround solution, such as on Reddit here, people are using server accounts. Using a server account on Reddit is also not easy. User will have to repeat a registration process, which usually has multiple steps and is not intuitive. People who are less knowledgeable about SMPs and the internet may even know how to create a server account, right? And SMPs should consider allowing users engage anonymously more easily. On the other hand, human moderators on SMPs have cost, including that it is time-consuming and it has psychological toil. On some platforms like Facebook, human moderators are paid, but that does not stop human moderators from presenting PTSD kind of like symptoms. All of this could lead to the grievance of human moderators and may lead to further issues. Another aspect here is the seeing those content of misconduct all day could actually lead to the moderator's own misconduct of authority, for example, retaliation, right? So we argue that new forms of moderation are needed to reduce the human cost. Second, we found that compared to identified accounts, content posted by server accounts is 71.5 more likely to be removed by moderation. This is definitely Cohn's part of online anonymity, right? So, however, the solution here is not to disallow server accounts and the anonymous identity on any SMPs completely. This would make it very difficult for the users who have the actual privacy needs and want to seek information online, especially around highly sensitive topics. So while this study does not definitely resolve the ongoing debate regarding server accounts and anonymous identity on social media platforms, we argue that a robust and effectively implemented moderation mechanism may offer a viable solution. In an ideal situation, moderation can allow users with privacy needs to participate anonymously while ensuring the timely removal of harmful content and dissuade users who deliberately misuse anonymity on SMPs. Finally, we found that the likelihood of content being removed by human moderators increased with the sensitivity of subreddit. On one hand, we should continue working on enhancing the accuracy and the quality of moderation bots. On the other hand, though, future moderation systems on SMPs should incorporate context sensitivity in their design. Future research could explore how to enhance these systems to classify posts and comments based on the sensitivity levels, enabling moderators to identify and prioritize monitoring of sensitivity content on social media platforms more effectively. For SMPs that cover a broad range of topics, such as some subreddits are more sensitive and the others are not, practitioners should consider reallocating moderation resource to prioritize the moderation of highly sensitive topics. And yeah, that's it. Any questions?
Thank you. We have time for one question. Thank you.
Hello. Maybe it would be useful for us to get a sense of how the throwaway accounts are being identified. Do we have any information about the?
Oh yeah. Like I mentioned, to identify server accounts, we use a two-step approach. First, we use a programmatic way to actually examine all the username of the accounts we collected, which is we look into if the username contains throwaway or any like kind of variable sort of throwaway test on it. Then we use human moderators to take a look at those accounts again to make sure there's no false positives. Also, we use human raters, not human moderators, human raters to look into the actual content to make sure that the use of throwaway accounts is intended for throwaway accounts, not actually, for example, something I throw away a bag of trash or something. So that's a two-step process following by the literature.
Great, thank you. And again, let's give a round of applause. Yeah, I request the next presenter to be on the podium, please. So the paper is on a field study to uncover and a tool to support the alert investigation process of Tier 1 analysts. So Leon? Yes, Leon from Eindhoven University of Technology is going to talk about it. And just so you know, 10 minutes is not really enough time, as we know, to talk about the entirety of paper. There are a lot of results which is in the paper probably the presenters cannot cover. So please go over it and ask questions. And I'm seeing the responses all of you want to network, so which is great. So talk about the paper. That's a good starting point.
Yeah, does it work? Okay. Oh, yeah, here, yeah. Okay. Hello, everyone. So today I'm presenting a field study to uncover a tool to support alert investigation process of Tier 1 analysts. My name is Leon. And before I start talking about how we uncovered and stuff like that, right? First, this is a collaborative project with a SOC at our university, and I'm just saying this because SOCs are very different, so it's important to know what kind of SOC we're talking about to understand the context of this research, right? So, this SOC mainly focuses on monitoring, and it permanently employs 7 people, so it's relatively small, from which 4 analysts, 2 full-time, right? And then the Tier 1 analysts consist mainly of interns here, so this is also like the target group that we're talking about. Fortunately, Tier 1 analysts generally have a high turnover also in industry anyways, so interns in a degree are more close to like real life than like, let's say with Tier 2 and Tier 3 analysts. And the main customers it serves is like small, medium enterprises and education in the Netherlands, meaning that like the context of like what is considered an attack, what isn't considered an attack is relevant to these clients too. Right, then the question is, okay, why uncover the alert investigation process, right? Isn't there already a lot of cognitive task analysis on their jobs? Well, yes, there is. But the problem is that most of them focus on like workflows as a whole rather than specifically like taking an information-driven approach, right? So a lot of literature says, oh, okay, so now analysts, once they find out this, say check logs. Then the question would be, okay, yeah, but what logs do they check? So we specifically focus on like what kind of information they try to extract, not like in this technical terms like, oh, it's a log or it's an alert, but what information are they looking at? Are they looking at the attacker's IP, or are they gonna look at something, like the protocol used, things like that, right? What are the like indications that they're looking at? Then the second is, okay, and when do they look at that information, right? In what order do they look at it? And finally, like where do they look at like these kind of information, right? Do they look at the SIEM or do they go to the external tools, etc., etc.? These are like kind of the layman terms of the research questions. Like the actual research questions are a bit more wordier, but yeah. And answering these questions hopefully leads to like an interesting insights, which can then hopefully lead to aiding the analysis process, right? Either by improving the training, or for example, devising analysis aid tool. Spoiler alert, we did that. I will explain that more in detail later. So that's like the motivation on why you should uncover it. Okay, given that, how do we then classify this, what type of information one can acquire, right? So this is like a threat analysis process that I provided in like a future work. And basically here, not future work, past work, sorry. And here it's like divided into 4 different types of informations that you can like, you should chronologically order, like investigate to that degree to like process an alert basically, right? So there's 4 categories. Relevance indicators, so is the alert like even relevant right now, right? Is the signature like up to date? These kind of things. Then additional alerts, right? Is this alert like, has it been triggered often in the past? Is it a known false positive? These kind of questions you should be asking. Contextual informations, right? This is like what like often we talk in like security operations centers as like basically just logs around it and other like data around the alert, right? And then finally, attack evidence, right? Is there actually evidence of an attack? Was a connection, for example, that was required successful? These kind of, information. If you want to know more about this, there's like a separate paper on that. Right, so then what did we do specifically on this, right? We conducted an experiment with 400 investigations in total. So we had subjects, so that's the first experiment. So we had 5 analysts, right, which investigate in total 200 alerts, but each alert was investigated twice to maximize the data size, right? And the most important thing is they were thinking aloud, right? For those who are unfamiliar with that, that means you verbalize your thoughts while you're analyzing. So they just blurt out everything that they think, and we kind of force them to blurt out everything that they think. We had 178 real alerts that are benign, and this is like actual network traffic that has been triggered in that SOC in the past. And we also have 22 injected attack-related alerts. Unfortunately, these needed to be generated because attacks are actually very rare in SOCs, and most alerts are like false positives. So you can just simply pop up 22 actual attack-related alerts within like few months. This produced in total 33 hours of alert investigation footage, which we transcribe and we split it into 400, for each investigation. Right, so then we have the transcript. What did we do then to actually gain insights of that? We had to devise a coding system. And for this, we considered 2 aspects, right? One is input, i.e. the acquire, what kind of information is being acquired, right? And process, what kind of information is like aimed to be, collected. So what are the actions being taken to collect information? The important thing is those don't necessarily have to match up, right? For example, analysts can decide to look at log data, but then get distracted at the end and like at the end just observe like a success indicator of an attack or something. These are 2 different information categories, but it happened within the same stream of events, let's say. Right, and that's why the distinction is important here. We populated the categories, these inputs and processes through 3 brainstorm sessions. Input, we consider these 4 information categories that I just described. And also on top of that, 3 different sources where they gather information, namely the SIEM, but also external tools, and also previous knowledge. So do you just know something from like recollecting from your memory, let's say, especially because it's a very context-driven job. And with process, we just filled it up with more specific actions, right? So for example, for contextual information, we brainstormed, okay, what can one realistically do? For example, check for logs, inspect protocol-specific logs, right? Or if you want to go more specific, investigate whether SSL connection has been established, things like that. In total, this coding system worked relatively well. We had an 88% rate reliability. Okay, and then what did we actually find out then from actually coding all these transcripts and, like doing this work, right? So first of all, we found that like, if you look at the 2 different types of alerts, namely the attack-related and the not attack-related alerts, we found that only contextual information, i.e. like log data and things around it, is consistently collected, right? So this has been like in line with past literature, but this kind of highlights that context is very important for analysts, right? And the other types of information were in total only collected half of the times. But what's interesting is the difference between attack-related and not attack-related alerts. So for example, we could see that for relevance indicators and for attack evidence, and for attack evidence, it kind of makes sense. You don't always have evidence of attack if there's no attack, right? But for relevance indicators, it's a bit weird, especially if you train them to collect that information first. Analysts only tended to collect those informations when it's actually, like when it's about attack-related alerts. And we found that in general, predominantly SIEM was used, unlike all the hundreds of other tools that they could be using, which currently the literature has been suggesting that they use a lot of other tools too, but the frequency seems to be less, right? And if you actually look at the actions, I'm not gonna go deeply in detail of this picture, but the biggest takeaway is the actions were very chaotic. Even though they were trained to follow a certain step of information acquisition in the SOC, they didn't follow it at all, and they just did kind of whatever they want. Oftentimes with scan alerts, right, rather than checking whether the signature was even relevant, a lot of the people, for example, the subject in this code, just decided to check on the connection log and see if it has a response, because if it doesn't have a response, the lives are easier, and you can just forget about it. So then, what did he do? we developed a tool to try to fix this. I'm not going to go in detail of this tool. This has been published in USEC of last year. Proceedings will be up soon, right? And what's interesting is that this tool gave analysts structure, but also efficiency. So we did the same experiment, unfortunately with less alerts and less analysts because of actual industrial constraints of security operations centers. And we found that this tool led to analysts being first of all, less chaotic, so say follow what's been taught in the training more, stepwise, right? But and say often got this information. But what's interesting is despite having to get, in theory, more information, for attack-related attacks, they turned out to be more efficient, right? They actually had to do less actions in total, suggesting that maybe in status quo, people actually waste a lot of actions in attack-related alerts if they don't have any tool aiding them to follow a process that's not necessarily being imposed upon, but encouraged on the parent SOC. So in overall, structure really, really helps analysts. Right. And this concludes the conclusion, right? Because then basically, not all alerts and investigations are the same, right? But what did we learn from this entire exercise, right? Is that generally we had more insights into where they collected the information, how they collected, meaning that it was easier for the SOC to identify information that always people try to collect, yet are very trivial to collect, right? Which suggests that maybe automation is possible, right? If analysts just generally jump straight to the connection log, looks for the 404 error to try to get rid of that alert, why not automate that part of the process? So if this isn't a 404 or something that comes back from HTTP log, they can continue on the investigation, right? But we also realize that attack-related alerts are quite complex, and there both groups follow these processes more. So we need to find more structures beyond this tool to aid these kind of attack alert investigations. And finally, what is it for the future? Because the problem is, okay, we have a lot of data here, but it's a think aloud exercise, meaning that people start to verbalize their own thoughts. What if they didn't verbalize their own thoughts, right? So you need a systematic way to collect still a lot of information about information acquiring without forcing these people to do a think aloud protocol, ideally in a real-time experiment, real life environment rather than a controlled experiment. These are the directions we are heading towards. So yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Great, thank you so much. I think it is very evident that why our reviewers really, really enjoy the methodology about the period. And again, just to mention that this was the Best Paper Award. So please feel free to ask questions. We have time for one question before we give the award to Leon here. Okay, while we are thinking, how about we do the awards first and somebody can think of a question and then we can continue with that. Okay, so again, let's have a round of applause for the
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah.
Okay, let's do this up there. Where I don't fall. Okay. Okay. Okay, so by the time from a fall, let's have a question. Okay, I can ask one. So you looked into it was a 400 as well as 36 participants, right?
No, sorry, not 36 participants. So the second experiment had 36 investigations.
Yes, investigations. Okay, so investigations. So in that, when you saw, because it was a time-based analysis as well throughout this period of time. So did you see any kind of difference between these investigations which happened in the first iteration versus the second one?
Well, yeah, there was a difference, but the difference is, it's hard to say it's because of time, right? Because in the second one, we had a tool that we said, hey, please use this. And in the first one, we didn't have that tool. So it is possible that some of the shifts came from time,
yeah.
But the thing is, the training is controlled in the sense that training procedure hasn't changed at all, other than the fact that, so they still knew about the process, they still knew about the information category in both groups,
yeah.
just that the second group also had a tool. So in that sense, I think time, if the time is a factor, it's on what types of alerts was observed.
Yeah.
I can't go too much into detail for that, for non-disclosure argument purposes, but I don't think there was a very significant difference in that.
Yeah. Great, thank you again, and I highly encourage, we have gone over the ACSAC paper as well as we were preparing for it, and it's a really great paper, so please look into that. I think there is an archive version which you can look into even if the proceedings are not there. I got it from Luca, either.
Actually, no, in the TUE website, I think.
Yes, yes, so we have read, I definitely remember reading it, so I did not know the proceedings are not out yet. But that said, again, let's give a round of applause. And thank you again, and congratulations on the Best Paper Award. So our next paper is on security advice on content filtering and circumvention for parents and children as found on YouTube and TikTok, and Ran, right? Oh, sorry. I'm just confused who's the presenting author, okay? Sorry about that. So John from the University of Tennessee, Knoxville will be talking about it. So let's give a round of applause to John.
Sure, I can try that one. Oh, I think this one. Okay, great. Hello all. Yes, I'm John Tsudik from the University of Tennessee. I'm here to present our work on behalf of our first author, Ron El-Ghawi, who couldn't be here today. In the digital age, security and privacy is an increasingly important issue. And within that, there is a growing concern about online security and privacy, especially within families. And what I mean by that is that there is this kind of competition of interests within families, wherein you have parents who want to protect their children from the things online. They want to restrict their access to devices through using something like time limits, or they want to restrict their access to certain content by using content filters. On the other hand, you have children who want digital autonomy. They want to be able to access what they want. They want to be able to use their device as much as they want. So you have some kind of like competing interest at play. And in this framework, we find that both parents and children are turning to online resources to get advice and also to learn how to accomplish the goals that they have. But these resources are not well researched. So we want to fill in the knowledge gap. We want to understand what kind of advice is being offered to parents and children when it comes to their individual goals. We want to understand, is this information accurate and actionable? Here, when we say actionable and accurate, what do we mean? We mean accurate as in, is it truthful? If it says it accomplishes task Y, does it actually accomplish that task? Is it up to date, for example? Actionable, we mean, was there specific steps that they could have followed? Were they pointed to specific resources? Or was it, that would be actionable? Or was it more of a general discussion on a topic? Was it more ambiguous? That would not be very actionable. And we also want to know, is there a discussion about these competing interests that we're talking about? Or are one or both sides being ignored in terms of their individual interests? So that brings us to platform selection. With platform selection, we chose to use TikTok and YouTube for a few reasons that you can find in the paper, but I want to go over one here specifically. It's because that they are a marketplace of ideas where children are regularly engaging, and they have a substantial number of users. Some late 2024 and early 2025 statistics show that TikTok has 1 billion users or more. YouTube has even more at 2.5 billion. Furthermore, some statistics about TikTok, 35% of their users are age 18 to 24, with an additional 14% age under 18. And even some research has shown that children under the age of 13, which is the current minimum age for these platforms, are accessing these platforms. So we have a population of interest to us because these are children and we're studying and looking at parent and child dynamics. So we also want to say that we're not the first to use TikTok and YouTube for qualitative source of data, so we're in line with some other previous work. So what did we do once we had these platforms? So we had 33 search queries from a pilot study, and we ran these search queries on both platforms, and we collected 839 videos. We watched and coded these videos, and we remained with 399 relevant videos. But how did we get here? Well, when we took a search query, we ran it on each platform, and we collected the first 200 videos from that search query, and then we watched them in the order that they were returned until we ran into 5 consecutive videos where no new topic was discussed. We considered that a point of saturation, and we stopped coding videos for that topic and moved on to the next. And at minimum, we at minimum coded 10 videos for every topic to make sure that we're at least trying every topic. This table shows you kind of a breakdown of the videos by platform and by audience. We ended up with almost the same number of relevant videos for children and for parents. In terms of coding, we coded videos to see if they were sponsored, for example, if they were professionally produced, if they were trying to be serious or funny. And of course, we coded them in terms of the actual content. Were they about VPNs? Were they about content filters? And our coders developed a code book, and there was a code book developed, and our coders were trained to use the code book, and a lot of details about the code book and coding can be found in the paper. So what did we find? Well, in general, the videos did pretty well based on our prior expectations. They were largely accurate, comprehensive, and actionable. When we consider the breakdown of videos, this table shows how videos rank across those 3 attributes by platform and by audience. First, comparing the 2 platforms, we find that YouTube was more accurate than TikTok. Also, looking at how when we were coding videos, we found that videos on TikTok quickly became less relevant. Within 5 or 6 videos, TikTok had jumped to another topic that was not core to what we were studying. Whereas YouTube, we could go for 25 videos and we'd still be on the same topic, and it would still be relevant to what we were studying. And TikTok was more of a brief overview, general topics for their videos. YouTube was more in depth. Some of these differences are due to the nature of the platforms. When we consider the difference in audience, we find that videos for children are more actionable by a decent margin, and videos for parents are more accurate, also by a good margin. And this is one of the first problems that we noticed, or I guess concerns, because if videos are actionable but not accurate, this could lead to unforeseen risk for children, for example, where they're not aware of whatever the steps they're following, what the implications could be. And that brings us to ethics. Ethics was not very much talked about in the videos that we looked at. Only about 10% of the videos even covered ethics. And this is a breakdown, again, by platform and by audience. And we find that about a third of parent videos talked about a parent's right to monitor their child or content filtering. About a third advocated for children, and about a third talked about how this was a nuanced topic that needed more discussion. Compare that to children, where only 3 videos talked about ethics, and all 3 of them were pro-children. So a parent's right, or a parent's potential right to monitor their children or for content filtering was only talked about in parental videos or videos aimed at parents. In videos aimed at children, this was never brought up. So if ethics was a rare topic, then what was actually covered in these videos? Well, this chart shows some of the most talked about topics in the videos that we found, and it's also in the paper, probably at a bigger scale. Here, children are green and parents are purple in terms of the topics. And we see kind of a cat and mouse game where, for example, you have children in green, they want to circumvent DNS content filtering. And right under that, parents in purple, install non-DNS content filtering. So this kind of cat and mouse where parents are trying to build up protections or build up some kind of restrictions, and children are trying to get around that. What's really interesting about this is the very top one, education. Parents were pretty much the only audience out of our 2 audiences that were told about just general education about some of the topics that were in our search queries. And like I said previously, most of the ethics discussion was in videos aimed at parents. The only topic that was really covered by both parents and children was accessing a network, which you can think of that like how to get on the Wi-Fi, sometimes how to get onto your neighbor's Wi-Fi, accessing a network like that. So in terms of goals and actual techniques that were employed by these audiences, parents had pretty straightforward goals. They wanted to protect their kids from inappropriate content. They wanted to secure children from online threats, and they wanted to manage internet distractions. How did they do that? Mostly through content filtering. For example, DNS filtering, non-DNS filtering. Children, on the other hand, they wanted to bypass time-based and content-based restrictions. They wanted the unrestricted access, as I had talked about. And they did that through a variety of methods: VPNs, proxies, restarting their devices, alternate networks. Actually, one video that was kind of interesting was someone had explained how to get a free router and to set it up and to use that to access the internet or to access a network. So those are some of the biggest highlights we found in our discussion or in our exploration of this topic. This is our first author, Ron, and that's her email for any questions that I can't help you with today. But with that, are there any questions?
Thank you. Okay. Yeah, you can ask. I have one question as well, so we can tag team here.
Hi, Elijah again from CMU. Really interesting. I'm curious whether you found anything that seemed like a scam or trying to get children to, like, you know, hurt themselves in looking at this type of advice.
Thank you for the question. I personally don't remember anything like that. Maybe our first author, who was more steeped in the research, would have remembered some of those videos. But in general, we didn't find anything that was, and by scam, I understand that you mean like intentionally trying to mislead. I don't remember any videos specifically that were intentionally trying to mislead the children. They very well could have existed, and maybe the first author remembers some of them.
So when we when you are defining the children, what's the age range of them?
I believe the age range was, I don't know if we defined specifically an age range, but I believe if we were talking about children, we're talking about under the age of 18. But because we're talking specifically about children within a context of child and parent dynamics. So we're talking about more of like the conceptual child and the conceptual parent rather than the literal child. More of the abstract child and the abstract parent that map to real parents and children. You might check the paper and get back to you on that if we did define an age range, but I don't believe so, because we are concerned mostly with the dynamic between children and parents. And specifically in that our queries were set up such that we asked them from the point of view of a child. We try to map them to what a child might be searching on these platforms.
Great. And one last question. Given the current, again, not to make this discussion very politicized, but given the current change in environments, and because you have worked on TikTok and YouTube, right, do you kind of foresee any kind of analysis changes or any kind of data changes for your research?
I think you mean because of potential restricted access to
Yes.
TikTok? Okay. I think it's an interesting question, and in the paper we actually do talk about how it would be nice to explore other types of platforms, for example. So we picked TikTok. Another reason we picked TikTok and YouTube is because we were interested really in video form, and there are other platforms such as Instagram or Facebook or even Reddit in which there are more text-based types of posts, and it's not all limited to videos. So even with the decrease or potential decrease in access to TikTok, there are still plenty of social media platforms where this type of research can be conducted and where probably parents and children alike are going to gain this type of information.
Great. Thank you. Let's give a round of applause to
you.
John. Yes, our last paper for the session is, do we call them that? Absolutely not. Juxtaposing the academic and practical understanding of privacy-enhancing technologies. So, who's presenting?
I'm Stephen.
Yeah, hi. So Stephen from Technical University of Munich is going to give this talk. Just disconnect and reconnect. I think there is some problem with HDMI itself.
Yeah.
Yep.
Excellent. All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Steven. Happy to present the work here. I won't repeat the title, but it was super interesting to us. Hopefully it's interesting to you as well. Great, so we're dealing with the term privacy-enhancing technologies today. Most of us in the room have probably heard this in one context or the other, or maybe work with it day to day. But as you can see here, the academic community has been pretty infatuated with the term. This is going for about 30 years now since its inception, and we see both, more and more papers coming out, but also at an increasing rate. And if we ask ourselves what exactly is a privacy-enhancing technology, that's kind of at the core of this work. But some of you in the room, maybe me here, would consider some of these technologies to be privacy-enhancing technologies. It's more of this umbrella term. So my personal favorite is differential privacy, but this is not supposed to be a comprehensive list, just a kind of list of ideas that what you might consider a privacy-enhancing technology. So getting to the motivation of this work, so as you just see now, and maybe you might know this even outside this talk, research has really kind of introduced really an awesome variety of different privacy-enhancing technologies for a variety of goals and a variety of contexts, but all with this kind of common goal of data protection, data privacy, whatever you want to call it. But in this work, we kind of asked the question you see in the second bullet point here, what exactly makes a technology a privacy-enhancing technology, and which of these pets that are considered in the wild to be privacy-enhancing technologies, and specifically in academia, are actually considered to be privacy-enhancing technologies in practice. And at this point, I'll give a disclaimer. This might seem very pedantic, what is a pet, but hopefully this becomes clearer as the talk goes along. And more importantly, we look at the kind of in practice, how this terminology is perceived. Is it actually used? Is it understood? Does it even matter if we have this common understanding between academia and practice? And with that, we asked this one simple question you see on the screen here. Simply, what is the operational definition of pets in the literature, and how this differs at all, if at all, than what can be viewed in the industry? Great, so quickly going over our methodology, we do this kind of two-part methodology to kind of represent the academic perspective. We do this systematic literature review. This is really to focus on works that just kind of generally look at pets, to survey them, to define them, maybe to characterize what a pet is. And what we want to do, and you'll see this later, is extract pet definitions, examples, and what we call building blocks. We'll get to that in a bit. And again, going to the other side into industry, we conduct 20 semi-structured interviews with privacy professionals. And again, we just want to kind of see what the perceptions of this term are, is it used, what the general feeling of adoption of this term and the technologies in general are. And finally, we conduct 2 surveys, one to answer this what pets are pets question, and also to evaluate some definitions we propose. But again, we'll get to that later. So jumping into the results of the literature review, we kind of narrowed down a bunch of papers to 37 papers that, again, really specifically focus on just looking or surveying pets in general. And from these papers, we were able to kind of aggregate and narrow down their definitions, their given definition of privacy-enhancing technologies, these 7 definitions that you see on the screen here. And from these definitions, we kind of extracted what we call building blocks, or essentially what the kind of fundamental aspects of a privacy-enhancing technology are. And this was done sort of iteratively, so if we go through the years, kind of new aspects were added to the definition, or some were ignored, and we kind of just took the unique aspects going through the years. We started with this building block 0, which is arguably something that all privacy-enhancing technologies should do, and we kind of went from there. Jumping to the practical findings, so through our 20 semi-structured interviews, we kind of group our finding into these 4 arrow points you see here. And the first is we're looking at these definitions, or what the definition of privacy-enhancing technology is in practice, generally how they're perceived, or this specific terminology is perceived. To start off, 3 of our 20 interviewees never even heard this term, so this is kind of telling to begin with. So obviously we interviewed privacy professionals, so they work in the privacy field, but this specific terminology did not really come across or come in their work at all. Secondly, a lot of times privacy-enhancing technology was kind of equivalated with kind of tools for regulatory compliance. So we need to be compliant to regulations. We use pets for that. So this is partially true. As you see, one of the building blocks is definitely that, but it's interesting to see that sort of strong connection. The conflation between privacy-enhancing technologies and security measures was also brought up both by the interviewees and also from their experiences. And this 4th point, this led to the namesake for our work, one particular interviewee was very adamant in the fact that this term is very academic and is not used in practice. So of course this is kind of an exaggerated point, but again, this is telling that it's not necessarily always we see eye to eye, so to speak. And finally, we have to keep in mind that a lot of interviews brought up pets is not the end-all be-all term in the industry. There are other sort of similar terminologies that kind of point to the same thing. So we have to keep aware that maybe sometimes we're talking about the same thing, but just different terminologies. So it might be as simple as that. So looking to these academic definitions that we extracted, we asked the interviewees or the industry professionals to kind of rank what they believe to be the best definition, the most fitting definition of privacy-enhancing technologies. So 1 being the best and 7 being, the least preferable. And what you see here, there are winners. So there is definition 5 was the winner. But as you can also see, they're all generally tending towards the middle. There's no clear winner of what the best or most preferred definition is in the literature or from the practical perspective. So again, this kind of points to some unclarity of what exactly a pet is. And the same thing with the building blocks, although we did achieve sort of more clear results or clearer results, specifically this compliance aspect in this building block 5 that you see here. Finally, kind of characterizing any sort of perceived gap between academia and industry that was brought up in the interviews, we choose to represent this with 4 representative quotes. These can be found in the paper as well. But some major themes are the fact that using pets and something that might be disregarded in the academic sphere is the sort of economics or the profitability of using these pets, or maybe even the lack of profit when implementing them, or the fact that maybe in some businesses it's not really understood what these pets are in general, and this again goes along with the storyline of our work. And also, again, going back to the compliance aspects, pets are sort of kind of made a connection to this regulatory aspect a lot, and the fact that maybe this is something that is kind of ignored in the academic literature, that this is a very practical topic. And finally, this last thing, this again points to one of our previous points, some professionals might be using pets without they would never actually admit or say they're using privacy-enhancing technologies. And finally, this what pets are pets question. So what we did is from the literature sources, we extracted all the specific technologies that are named in these sources, and we asked 40 privacy professionals really just to rate yes, which is 1, neutral 0, or -1, no, whether they believe these are privacy-enhancing technologies or not. So we see a couple stories here. There are clear winners or clear technologies that are generally perceived to be privacy-enhancing technologies. You see anything with encryption, differential privacy, so these kind of very pervasive privacy-enhancing technologies that might have been seen in many contexts. We also see clear not winners. So one's things like biometric authentication that many people would disagree to them being privacy-enhancing technologies, even though they're listed in academic sources a lot as a privacy-enhancing technology. And this big section in the middle, these error bars sort of represent neutral responses. And so one gap in our interpretation is we're not really sure whether professionals don't know what these technologies are, or they're not sure if they would personally classify them as privacy-enhancing technologies. So that was interesting for us to see. And finally, one of the last things we did is kind of propose 2 new definitions for time purposes. We only focused on the second one. But we kind of took the best building blocks as ranked by our interviewees, kind of merged them into a new definition, and proposed this to survey respondents and ranked them on the 3 metrics you see here. So good news is we were able to kind of improve on the metrics as composed of the top 2 ranking definitions from the interviewee. The bad news, we lost out on understandability a little bit. There seems to be a trade-off as we kind of pack more of these building blocks into a definition. Maybe the understandability goes down a little bit, but again, not the worst thing. And finally, this is something that we really wanted to bring up in this talk, the sort of so what question. And I pointed to this before with the pedantic question that we were asking. And we asked this to our interviewees, do we even need a common understanding or a common definition? Is this something that's worthwhile to you? And nearly unanimously, they said yes, but of course, many people would say yes. But we dug a little deeper, of course, like why? Why would this actually be important? We list some reasons that were given in interviews, which are very kind of important for us to understand, but also this very representative quote that really kind of points to the value of a collective understanding of both what a pet is, but also what it's not. And it's clear to make this, and it's very important to make this distinction such that everything doesn't become pet, just like everything doesn't become AI. And so while we understand that, as, if we did have a unified definition, it wouldn't immediately facilitate adoption and fix everything. We see that it's a worthwhile start. So just in concluding what we did here, we juxtaposed this sort of academic and practical view of privacy-enhancing technologies. We learned there are many existing definitions, even in the academic literature, all with these sort of varying aspects and focuses. And although the term is familiar to most people in the industry, it's not widely used or maybe even understood. And it's not really even agreed upon which specific technologies would be considered a privacy-enhancing technology. So this kind of opens up the path for future research, kind of gaining clarity on that. And of course, we can try to improve these academic definitions or these kind of comprehensive definitions, but certainly this is only a start. And yeah, so thank you. The paper link is here. I would invite you to read it if you want to, and happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
So I can ask, so I was reading the paper and it looked like the experience differed from 1 year, but mostly 5 years and above, right?
Yep.
So have they mentioned, apart from pets, that definition, have they used any other cumulative term instead of pets? Why did 3 out of the 20 interviewees did not recognize it?
Definitely, yeah. So yeah, I pointed to that a little bit, but I will confirm that we generally interviewed people that were more senior. It's just kind of how it turned out. They had more experience. They were more in manager positions. We had a lot of privacy engineers as well, but also more senior. But yeah, they also pointed to these other terms, privacy preserving technology, privacy by design techniques, privacy management software. And we didn't dig too deeply into that, but we might all be talking about the same things. Or maybe not. If you think about privacy by design, that's not really a specific technology. It's more of a kind of a way of thinking or a kind of a framework. And one would be hard pressed to say that's equivalent to like differential privacy in terms of privacy enhancing technology. But the problem is I think some people do see it that way. And how can we put those two things in the same light? It's very difficult. And I think that's why there should be more clarity on what exactly is a privacy enhancing technology so we can say, okay, this is not one. It's great for privacy, but it's not a pet. But yeah, hopefully that answered your question.
Thank you so much. Yes, of course. Any other questions? In case we don't, we would like to take this offline. Oh, there is. Oh, thanks.
Scott Rudy from the University of Tennessee. I wonder if part of the problem with understanding this is the challenge in defining the difference between privacy and security. Like, for example, one of my students was asking me, like, as I mentioned, oh, I'm less interested in kind of like pets research. And like, well, what does that mean, privacy versus security? I'm like this technology is kind of both or not. So do you think maybe that's some of the confusion there is you're asking about what's privacy and they're like, well, that's more security, and sometimes the difference between those two is awfully amorphous.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think that's definitely on point. And I think there are many factors contributing to this unclarity or whatever you want to call it. But that is one of them. And so much to the point that a lot of times in the interviewees and also previous work we've done, when you say, what are your opinions on privacy? What do you think of privacy enhancing technology? They immediately start talking about security controls or something like that. And it's not really, I don't think it's obviously any single person's fault, but maybe in the culture of companies, these things are just very conflated, right? So privacy and security, same thing. Or maybe not. But you're absolutely right, and I think there should be more of this distinction on what exactly are the clear definitions of both. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions? In case we don't, again, as I said, it's difficult sometimes to stay awake without the coffee, but I really encourage all of you to please contact Stephen if you have further questions. So that said, let's give a round of applause.